So that's what we talk about, and we would like you all to join us. We're trying to get 1 million private citizens who will come along and join us in the next, by the 2012 vote. And if we do that, we'll change these laws, no doubt in my mind. We've given 5,500 presentations around the world, mainly in the U.S. in the last 6 years. And about 80% of our audience are convinced every time we go out. So we will change these laws. And this, I can't emphasize too much that this spin-off, this zero tolerance attitude, came right out of the Prohibition attitude. And now it's in all the schools, and it's making things even worse in the schools. And you wonder where all this stuff is going to go. Because, yeah, the schools are becoming prisons. And the prisons, we have a national prison industry in this country, making mega bucks off of putting people in little cells. And one of the reasons that you have such a hard time with this, coming up with any good points about it, is because everybody in that movie was talking about having maybe 100 people to work with in a day, students. Wouldn't that change tremendously if we only had, say, one teacher for every 15 students? So we could really have time for them, instead of, as that guy said, could we have 5 minutes for a student in a day? You can't have that because of the war on drugs, because of all this money we're spending, because of things like in California in the last 10 years, in California they hired 25,000 new prison guards, and they fired 8,000 teachers. So the whole point of this is the schools are going to become prisons. And anybody that doesn't fit into the school prisons are going to go to the real prisons. I'll take some questions.
Yeah. Let's just do 3 questions total so then Heidi can go. And sorry, I'm going to steal the first one, but you guys can ask questions after this whole thing too. But what is your vision for like a post-end of Prohibition society? Like, are people going to be able to go into a pharmacy and get any drug they want over the counter? Do they have to get a prescription? Like, what is it going to look like, do you think?
Well, certainly any of the soft drugs should be treated roughly like we treat alcohol. And, you know, in certain states, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Virginia, they have state stores where you go to buy your alcohol. We think it would be perfectly fine to have state stores where you go to buy your drugs. Place where there's no advertisement whatsoever, there's no branding on the packages, and the whole idea is you would be spending this money on education to truly educate people about what drugs are and what they aren't, not this stupid DARE program, but real education, because when you really educate people about drugs, you have less people using those drugs. And the perfect example is that worst drug known to humans that I mentioned, nicotine. You know, in the last 30 years, we've cut the use of nicotine in half, and it's dropping every year. In 1985, 42% of all the people in this country smoked cigarettes. And we didn't start a war on those cigarettes. We started a very strong education program, and then we pretty much just regulated them out of existence. We said, yeah, you can smoke. If you want to smoke, smoke at home. Or you can smoke in your car. You're not going to smoke in a public place. You're not going to smoke in a school or a hospital or a library or even a bar in this state. So people end up going out and standing, you know, in temperatures of 20 degrees outside to smoke their cigarette. They're not going to do that long before they decide to quit. So now, today, only 20% of the people in this country smoke cigarettes. It's falling every day. Here's an interesting thing. I think he even mentioned something about that in the You got two curves in your high schools. You got a curve for smoking cigarettes and a curve for smoking marijuana, and they just passed each other. Cigarettes on the way down, marijuana on the way up. So, what's that say about this war on drugs? We can get a lot further through education than we will ever get through this question. Yeah.
Do you feel it should be like, even if legalization happens, should be the government's responsibility?
Absolutely. It has to be the government responsibility.
Should they just educate
Yeah.
people about it?
I don't trust the government very much, but I trust corporations far less, because I know the bottom line for every corporation is making a buck.
What I was asking, you know, is if they should like actively encourage people, like even though drugs are legal, we should give somebody a
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's nobody, I believe, that wants to see one additional drug abuser in the world. You know, we spend our entire adult life, whole careers, fighting against drug abuse. We haven't changed our mind about that at all. What we've changed our mind about is two things. One thing is, what is drug abuse? We no longer believe that drug abuse is anybody that uses the illicit drug, because we know there's such a thing as responsible drug use. It happens every day. And we've also changed our mind about what will really prevent that drug abuse. And the war on drugs doesn't prevent it. As a matter of fact, it makes it worse all the time. Let me say one more thing about it. You've got to understand that when you prohibit this drug, two things don't ever happen. The drug doesn't get any better, and it doesn't cause less people to use it. As a matter of fact, with the fruit of the forbidden tree type idea, you know, for our young people, it probably causes more people to use it. The two things always do happen, and they're terrible things. You prohibit any drug, the first thing that happens is you create an underground market for that drug that's instantly filled with stress. It's a commodity on the face of the earth. It's just a weed. If it weren't prohibited, these things wouldn't be worth anybody selling them. So that's the real problem with the war on drugs. The more you punish, the harsher rules you make, the more the drugs. Yeah.
I'm curious, now with cigarette smoking, the industry that's actually really benefited from us having it watered down has been companies that create the patches, or the Nicodorm gum, patches, so on and so forth. If we had drugs regulated in the same way in an attempt to sort of not only balance out and make sure that everything is being taken equal, that everything is safe, so to speak, and that it's being monitored, what industries do you think would wind up benefiting the most from legalizing of drugs in order to oversee the process to keep people a little bit safer?
Well, in the process that we foresee, we don't want, that's the last thing we want to do is have industry benefit at all. So that's why I think it should be run by the government. Start treating drug abuse as a health problem instead of a crime problem. We can actually help all these young people who are arrested and destroying their lives. And if we start using that $70 billion to create programs that give people hope for the future instead of taking away all hope by arrest and imprisonment, we'll have a whole lot better society. For instance, imagine a world where instead of spending $70 billion again next year to create harsher mandatory minimum sentences, what would happen if we legalized all drugs today, and next year we spent that $70 billion to create mandatory minimums in education for everything? How about mandatory minimum health care? How about thinking in terms of some very basic housing that everybody deserves? Get rid of homeless on the street. You know, you can do that sort of thing with $70 billion every year. And if we did that, if we created programs that give people hope for the future, can you imagine how many fewer drug users we have out there?